The Bitcoin Civil War. First there was Bitcoin, then there was a split, and that's where Bitcoin Cash comes in. And since then, it's been an all-out battle between the two. Now, to be clear, on this desk, we do not care which cryptocurrency does better. We're simply talking about what's going on in these markets. And now that Coinbase has officially added Bitcoin Cash to its platform, we thought it's the perfect time to break down the differences between the two. So BK's over at the Plasma with the backstory. Hi, Beeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go through these two, and I'm going to try to explain it very simply about what this split was about. But the split between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash ultimately is about how you scale this. The Bitcoin network was so popular that you needed to make it bigger. So really it came down to the size of the blocks. And you might want to think of the size of the blocks as the memory in your computer, in a sense. Also comes down to the immediate transaction speed going on today. Those two also feed into what you might pay on the network. So you do have to pay something to the miners to send $1 from BK to Guy. You have to pay different amounts, and those fees are dependent on how full the blocks are, how fast it is, how many miners are out there, how big the network effect is. And then, of course, there is the network effect. Notoriety is somewhat interesting in this case because there is a bit of a controversy over this. It is a bit of a civil war. So let's dig down a little bit more into this and see what the difference is between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. So the block size, or let's call it the memory size. Bitcoin today is at 2 megabytes. Bitcoin Cash moved it up to 8 megabytes. That means you can do more transactions every 10 minutes on the system as it is today. So we look at transactions. Right now, Bitcoin's about 3 to 7 transactions per second. Bitcoin Cash is 24 per second. Just to be clear, this isn't even close to what Visa does. So there needs to be another solution as to scale this, and that's what Bitcoin has. But let's look at the prices. I did a transaction today, cost me about $10 on Bitcoin, cost me about $1 on Bitcoin Cash. That's the difference you're seeing immediately. Now, Bitcoin has a much bigger network. It is accepted many other places. There's a massive development team on top of it, and they're building stuff called like the Lightning Network, which is actually the scaling solution for Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash has a much smaller network. It has a ways to go in developing that, and that takes some time. So that's the basic two differences between these. So the other thing I want to say is that I don't care which one wins. I don't have a dog in this fight. I own both of them. I think there's a place for both of them to win. So anybody who's looking at this and thinks that I'm trying to say one or the other, it is not true. I like them both.
Karen's got a question.
I got a question. Is there some number of market cap, some critical mass that Bitcoin Cash would have to reach for the networking effect to move over to Bitcoin Cash? Or is Bitcoin too far ahead?
I personally view a world where they can both serve two different functions. Bitcoin serves as a settlement layer, and Bitcoin Cash serves as a transactional currency. That's my personal view. I'd like to see them both get along. I think if that happens, it doesn't really, you don't have to have this rivalry, and it doesn't have to be a market cap that one wins versus the other.
All right. Thanks, BK, for that breakdown. Very eloquent. And now the man who called the rise in Bitcoin Cash, otherwise known as Bitcoin Jesus, a.k.a. Roger Ver. He'll be here right after this break. I'm Melissa Lee. You're watching Fast Money on CNBC, first in business worldwide. In the meantime, here's what else is coming up on Fast.
Vegas, baby, Vegas!
That's right, baby, because Sin City stocks are heating up. And there's one stock that traders want to double down on. We'll explain. Plus, in the beginning, there was one. At Gisson of Montreal, Quebec. Well, at Gisson of Montreal, Quebec, you are now one of 200,000 Fast Money Twitter followers. Thank you, Fast Money fans, for your support of America's post-market show. And join us at CNBC Fast Money. And no, the account is not run by an intern.
Do you want to hear something remarkable?
A large restaurant chain had customers texting in orders. The problem was, they'd cook their meal in 5 minutes, but the customer walks in 35 minutes. And what do you got? Soggy fries. Now they geofence each location with software that texts the kitchen and customer, ensuring each fry is crispy crisp.
And you know what? It's the end of soggy fries.
When it comes to business, communication is everything. Learn more at Vonage.com/everything.
The single click of the trade button. All your digging, all your vetting comes down to this one moment. pennies matter. Windows close. Prices vanish. Now, you could just click and hope you get the price you want, but you know better. Schwab's price improvement helped get a better price on 96% of orders. It's why we're rated #1 for trade reliability. Schwab is the better place for traders. Own your tomorrow.
What's the value of capital? What's critical thinking worth? A basketball costs $14. What's team spirit worth? What's it worth to talk to your mom? What's the value of a walk in the woods? The value of capital is to create not just wealth, but things that matter. Morgan Stanley.
I'm pretty handy around the house, but now that I have kids, I don't want to spend a Saturday installing a toilet or fixing an air conditioner. Thankfully, there's Home Advisor. A Home Advisor helps me find the best home pros in my area to handle any kind of project. They have verified reviews of the pros, and they do background checks, so you know you can trust them with your home. You can compare prices, book appointments, and what my wife loves most is that Home Advisor is completely free to use.
Go to homeadvisor.com or download the free app.
Planes, trains, and global trade. Bombardier CEO. The trade dispute that's making headlines. Should investors hang on for the ride? Squawk Box CNBC tomorrow.
You're watching CNBC, first in business worldwide. Welcome back to Fast Money. Bitcoin Cash officially getting added to Coinbase last night and surging nearly 50% today, igniting a firestorm in the crypto community. For more, let's bring in a man who went against the grain as one of the biggest supporters of Bitcoin Cash. He's known as Bitcoin Jesus because he was one of the first investors in Bitcoin itself. Roger Ver joins us now on the phone. Roger, great to have you back on Fast Money.
Thank you for having me again.
You made very clear your preference for Bitcoin Cash and why you saw the future for Bitcoin Cash. Does the addition of Bitcoin Cash to Coinbase accelerate sort of your doomsday calls for Bitcoin itself?
Of course, it accelerates the adoption of Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash has all of the characteristics that attracted me to Bitcoin in the very first place. And back in 2011, and what led me to become the very first person in the world to start investing in cryptocurrency startups. And those characteristics are that it's fast, cheap to use, and reliable. And Bitcoin Core and their development team have intentionally made Bitcoin Core slow, expensive to use, and unreliable. So if you have two versions of Bitcoin, one that's fast, cheap to use, and reliable, and the other that's slow, expensive to use, and unreliable, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out which one of those two versions of Bitcoin is going to be more popular. And it's clearly Bitcoin Cash.
You know, we've been following here on this show Bitcoin since probably around 2012. I consider myself a neophyte compared, obviously, to you and Brian Kelly here on the desk and so many others out there. But here's what really caught me off guard. The sort of polarized community when it comes to Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin. Is there not a world, Roger, where both can exist?
There should be, but it's really, really, really dangerous for Bitcoin Core holders because of the way the mining difficulty algorithm adjusts for Bitcoin Core. If Bitcoin Cash becomes popular enough and siphons away enough of the mining hash rate from Bitcoin Core in a short enough period of time, Bitcoin Core is in really, really, really big danger of coming to a screeching halt altogether. So I've been involved in Bitcoin for about 7 years now. That entire time, I've always been telling people to hold your Bitcoins and your cryptocurrencies on your own device where you're in control. Right now may be the only time where that's actually bad advice. You may want to consider holding your Bitcoins on an exchange. So if there's this mass exodus of people rushing for the door, your money will already be on the exchange. So you can sell your Bitcoin Core coins for more Bitcoin Cash or whatever else you want. You'll actually still be able to get something from them. Whereas if they're stuck on your own phone or your own computer, and everybody's running to the door because the hash rate is disappearing from Bitcoin Core and moving over to Bitcoin Cash, it'll be too late at that point to move your Bitcoins from your own wallet onto an exchange. So you'll wind up getting nothing instead of something.
I mean, that's frightening. So basically, it sounds like it's almost like I don't want to say a run on the bank. It's not quite equivalent, but this notion that there could be something that happens almost instantaneously and you'll want out of Bitcoin like that. That's what you're predicting?
I'm predicting that may happen. And
okay.
If you look at it right now, the average fee on Bitcoin is more than $30 today. And there's more than 250,000 Bitcoin transactions waiting to be included in blocks. That means you have somewhere around 250,000 angry and unhappy Bitcoin Core users. So if they're getting a bad experience that costs a lot of money, they're likely to switch to something else. And if they switch to Bitcoin Cash, that'll siphon away the hash rate from Bitcoin Core, which could make this doomsday scenario become possible. And what a terrifying thing to be if you're holding a lot of Bitcoin Core.
Hey, Roger, it's Brian Kelly. So I'm curious, I just did a thing, the comparison between the two coins, and it struck me in that both of the coins still have a long way to go before we can scale to the level of Visa or MasterCard. And, you know, Bitcoin itself and the core developers, who are some of the best in the world, are going towards the Lightning Network. Can you tell me what the plan is for Bitcoin Cash and scalability? If it gets as popular as you think it is, would it end up the same way as Bitcoin is today?
Well, I'd like to take exception to your first comment that the Bitcoin core developers are some of the best in the world. That's absolutely clearly not true. They took Bitcoin that used to have fast, reliable, cheap transactions on-chain, and they've turned it into this incredibly congested network that's been running at 100% capacity for months that provides a horrible user experience. And in that time, the Bitcoin's market share went from nearly 100% of the crypto coin market space down to way less than 50% now. So by those standards, I think they're probably one of the worst development teams in the entire crypto coin ecosystem. So in regards to the Lightning Network and their plan for future scaling, all of those things that they want to do in regards to Lightning Network and Layer 2 will work better, faster, and cheaper on top of Bitcoin Cash because there's more room in the blocks for everything to happen, and the blocks will be happening more reliably, and the transactions can be included in the blocks more reliably. So all of these things that they're working on can work better on Bitcoin Cash. So Bitcoin Cash is a better solution all the way around and is much more in tune with what was originally laid out for the roadmap of Bitcoin to begin with, which was permissionless, worldwide, fast, cheap, reliable transactions. And that's what Bitcoin Cash provides, and Bitcoin Core is providing the exact opposite of that.
In terms of scaling and greater acceptance, Roger, I understand that the addition of Bitcoin Cash to Coinbase was very important, but now Coinbase is investigating possible insider trading. Is it your take that perhaps there needs to be regulation of these exchanges and these online trading platforms? Is it enough for Coinbase to say we're going to launch our own investigation into this, and that should be sufficient for all you retail traders who are now, trading in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash? And I ask you this because maybe this sours investors out there from crypto, and that, in the end, would be bad for your thesis, wouldn't it?
I think insider trading is a non-crime. If you look at it, let's say a bunch of people had traded in advance, then the price wouldn't have been nearly as volatile. The price would already much more closely reflect what the market price would be after the news became public. And so, no, I don't think that should be an excuse for additional regulation on these Bitcoin exchanges. They're already being regulated pretty heavily. And at the end of the day, buyers need to be aware of whatever service they're using, whether it's a Bitcoin exchange or whether it's a coffee shop that's making your coffee. Be careful and take a look at what you're doing, and don't depend on the government to keep you safe from everything out there in the world.
And so, Roger, going forward, what is the plan here for the acceptance? Because, again, when I went through that and I said, there's a smaller network effect here for Bitcoin Cash, what's the plan from your point of view for growing that network effect?
The plan is more of exactly what worked for Bitcoin in the early phases, providing a wonderful user experience where anyone can send and receive any amount of money instantly, basically for free, and nobody can stop it. And so now we have all these businesses that used to be Bitcoin-only businesses. Once the Bitcoin core team succeeded in making Bitcoin less usable, they've started integrating altcoins. So we've seen the likes of blockchain.info, the world's most popular Bitcoin, Ethereum, and now Bitcoin Cash wallet, has added all of those, whereas previously they were only a Bitcoin wallet. We saw the same thing happen with Coinbase. We've seen the same thing happen with BitPay, and we've seen the same thing happen with Bitcoin.com. All these businesses and people that are actually trying to use Bitcoin in commerce, they aren't stupid. They realize that if the fees are more than $30 and you have to wait, days or weeks or maybe never for your transaction to go through, well, Bitcoin Core is not useful in commerce anymore. They're going to start using something else, and at the moment, that something else seems very clearly to be Bitcoin Cash.
I want to ask you about Charlie Lee selling all his Litecoin. Charlie Lee, of course, being the creator of Litecoin. Does it make sense that he wants to get rid of this because of a conflict of interest?
I have no idea, but Charlie Lee should be free to do whatever he wants with his own Litecoins. They're his, and if he wants to sell them, that's fine. If he wants to buy more, that's fine. It doesn't affect me one bit, but I don't really see Litecoin as being nearly as interesting. It's a competitor to Bitcoin Core, I suppose, but Bitcoin Cash is an even better version. And one really interesting point that Charlie Lee did make previously, he said that Bitcoin shouldn't raise the block size, referring to Bitcoin Core. But if Litecoin ever wound up having full blocks, he would just raise the block size. So I guess kudos to him for saying, do as I say, not as I do. And Litecoin is right there trying to eat away at Bitcoin Core's market share as well. So if I had a competing currency to Bitcoin Core, maybe I would give them bad advice too. I wouldn't actually, but that seems to be clearly what Charlie Lee has done. He gave Bitcoin Core a bunch of bad advice that crippled Bitcoin Core and made Litecoin in a position to pick up some of the slack that he created by giving bad advice to Bitcoin Core.
All right, Roger, thanks so much for phoning in. Always great to get your analysis of things. Roger Ver of Bitcoin.com. I'll go to you, BK, because I asked him the question, can the two coexist? Do you think the two can coexist? Why are people on Twitter so polarized about this?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this has a lot less to do about the technical specifications and more about the decision process in how a community comes together and forms consensus. And that's really to me, what's been happening over the last several years is there's been a dispute about how a community comes together and says, this is how we're going to move forward. The solution in this case was to split the community into two different coins. I'm not qualified to say which one is technically better. I'll leave that up to the developers.
So let me ask you, BK, could it be something more mundane, like there's so much more money at risk in Bitcoin because the market cap is so much bigger than Bitcoin Cash, and it's purely an issue of, wanting to, or for the community wanting to keep the value in Bitcoin?
Economics are a big driver of this entire thing. I mean, the whole idea of having a token like Bitcoin is to change the economic system. So a lot of people who got into this early are in it because they want to change the economic system. They want to change the inequalities, and so they're now at this point where they're trying to protect what they got into a long time ago. So yes, I think economics play a big role in it.
Still ahead, the Bitcoin boom doesn't stop. After the break, we'll talk to TD Ameritrade CEO Tim Honke in his first interview since adding Bitcoin futures to his platform. We've got much more Fast Money right after this.
All right, listen up. You know your strategy, and we've back-tested it all year long. Caston, you need to visualize your trend line and set your exit. If you see an opportunity, you go long on the play. You guys all understand what absolute return means? You gotta have fire in your belly to maximize your yield. There's no put option on winning. It ain't like that.
You know you're ready for TradeStation. Seize opportunities with real-time alerts and custom trading tools, even on the go. Traders trade with TradeStation.
Constipated?